this edition of the North Port Newsbreak, I am chatting with Natural Resources Manager Stefan Kalev. Welcome, Stefan.
Hi, Madison.
Thank you for being here, as always.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
It is. It's always so much fun to talk with you. So this time, we're going to be doing a little bit of a series here, focusing on different natural resources topics with some different voices along the way. But this time, we're going to be focusing on invasive species, especially in like an urban setting. So can we start with the basics and talk about what an invasive species is and like why it matters?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. Firstly, Florida is basically the capital of the world for invasive species. We have the perfect conditions for many of these to thrive. And these pretty much are non-native organisms that can modify or disrupt the environment, the ecosystem they populate. These can be plants, animals, and any other organisms. As mentioned earlier, some examples, we have Australian pine, melaleuca, Kogan grass, etc. These are some of the plant species that we may encounter that are highly invasive. Air potato vine, Brazilian pepper, these are just few more. And then invasive species of animals, common ones can be the brown anole lizards, Cuban tree frogs, iguanas, fire ants, of course, and surprisingly even wild hogs. Many people are not aware.
They're not aware that they're invasive. They're aware they're here, but not invasive, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Interesting. So how does like an invasive species problem impact urban ecosystems like compared to rural? Because of course we know what could happen in rural, or it starts to take over habitat, take over other species, but how does it affect urban landscapes or ecosystems?
Right. So urban ecosystems, they're more susceptible because they're already disturbed due to the urban activities. And they have limited amount of native species already there, which makes them even more easily getting outcompeted by the invasives. Now, if you compare that with a well-functioning native habitat, it's harder for the invasives to take over. So that would be, I would say, the easiest way to describe it.
Sure. Okay. So then is there one in Florida? I know you just listed a whole bunch of them, but is there one that serves like a greater threat in urban settings than others in terms of invasive species, or is it all kind of an even playing field?
I would say some impact the city more than others. Brazilian pepper, for example, you can see them all over the area. Fire ants, of course, they have other than being incredibly annoying and unpleasant, they have many other negative effects to the environment. But overall, each of these species leaves a type of mark, and in most cases, that's a negative effect to the environment here.
Right. And so how do these invasive species like get here? Is this humans bringing them over here?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And I would say in most cases, it's human-related activity. The question is whether the release happened intentionally. In some cases, people may release their unusual pets in the wild, and in others, the release may happen unintentionally. But either way, these are adaptive species. They're able to take over in a way, in many cases, unexpected. And like I said earlier, in most cases, it's one form or another of a man-made activity that got them introduced.
That's usually that's a theme when it comes to nature, huh? It's usually something to do with humans.
It's usually our
messing
fault.
something up, yeah, because we came into their house most of the time. So, is there anything that the city's working on now to help deal with this issue? Because we'll see people reach out talking about how there's a big thing of Brazilian peppers in blah blah area. But is there anything that we're doing to try and tackle this issue at all?
We're doing certain things. So one thing that comes to mind is us reaching out to some communities throughout the city, evaluating their habitat that's preserved. And in some cases, some of these areas may need some extra work. So
Right.
we are in process of establishing that type of I wouldn't use the word control, but more of guidelines and recommendations to meet the standards of what these habitats were designed to serve for. Another one is education. We are gladly educating citizens, answering their questions. In some cases, they may think that a certain animal or plant is invasive, but that may not be the case. So
Right.
we serve that role as well. So at this point, I would say these are the main two.
Okay. Okay, so now that we know what the city is working on, how can communities get involved to help manage and prevent it, like on their own in their own local urban areas?
So in some cases, communities and landowners can manage the property and be stewards of their land and remove invasive species. They can also learn more about how the Florida ecosystem works, and that may help them make sound decisions. They're encouraged to plant Florida-friendly landscaping
Sure.
on their property, and overall, if they have any questions, they can always reach out to us, and we can either gladly educate them or relay them to another entity that may be quite helpful.
Right. Sure. That's awesome. So, as we know, North Port is growing really fast, really quickly. That's why we're grateful to have your division here to help us along the way. So, what future challenges do you see in like managing invasive species, especially now like that we're growing so quickly?
There will be many, and we touched on a few, but as we grow and as our habitat continues to fragment, it's likely that it will be even more susceptible for invasive species in the future. So the question is to find ways to deal with these. In some cases, there may be an easy answer, and in some cases, it may be quite a challenge. But as long as there's this feeling of unity between government and citizens, and there's communication, I think that that's our best chance to beat some of these invasive species that impact our habitat.
Definitely, because for me, driving down the street, I don't know if I'd be able to pick out what a Brazilian pepper is, you know? So the more education of how to spot these things and how we can help is super important. So is there anything else you wanted to add about this topic before we wrap things up?
I just wanted to remind the community to not to be hesitant and to reach out to us if they have any questions. Also, the Sarasota County IFAS Extension Center, that's
Okay.
a great resource as well pertaining to native and invasive species management. But if any questions, an easy way to get in touch with us, natural resources at northportfl.gov.
Perfect. And I'll leave all the resources and things in the description as well so people can copy and paste them. But we appreciate you taking the time to come talk with us, Stefan. Definitely an important topic here in Florida, especially as we grow. So I appreciate you talking about it with us.
It's always great chatting with you, Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. And to everyone else, thanks for listening.